welcome back to another It's Tadpole MMA amateur MMA prediction video. This weekend we've got a big UFC event. We've got Israel Adesanya versus Marvin Vettori in the headliner. In the co-headline, we've got the Davison Figueiredo versus Moreno rematch, plus a bunch of other fun fights on the verdict card that I can't wait to get into. As for last week, on verdict, we managed to secure a silver badge. We went 3-2 on predictions. We did lose on the bets. As for those formula plays, we went 1 win, 1 loss, hitting Santiago Ponzinibbio at $2.10, but then losing the Walt Harris bet at $2.40. That was a tough pill to swallow. You know, if Walt Harris won, if he knocked him out when he had Marcin hurt, you know, we would have ended up profiting 12 units on the night, which would have really set the Tadpole in motion going into this pay-per-view. You know, he was the one leg of the multi that lost. We had him at the money line. We had him via knockout. A lot of eggs in the Walt Harris basket, and he failed us. Ended up down 2.9 units. So a sizable loss that could have been much, much nicer. Could have been a good night. As for my best call of the evening, it was the Ponzinibbio by decision. Took that O from Miguel Baeza, worked that jab, looked pretty good out there, looked back to his frenetic self, weathered the storm. You know, Baeza looked good himself. But yeah, just kind of took away some of those weapons and then really grinded out that third round, end of the second as well. Looked really good. My worst call of the night, Duško Todorovic. He was a massive verdict favourite, and he did not look deserving of the price at all. Gregory Rodriguez, the newcomer, although I thought he was a dangerous fighter, I didn't think he would beat Duško in the manner that he did. You know, secured a few takedowns, was way more active, had the better striking, better defensively as well, which was really surprising. And Duško Todorovic, he finds his way onto the Tadpole's never again list if he survives in the UFC for much longer. Yeah, it's that bleak for him. That bleak. As for this week, from 6 verdict fights, we've got 4 formula bets, and we have lots of unpopular opinions. So the Tadpole, he could be a hero this week, or it could be a massive villain if you are tailing the plays this week. But listen to my breakdowns, take it as you will, formulate your own opinions, and we'll get into that as the prediction video goes on. So at the bottom of the verdict card and the top of the prelims, we've got Drew Doba versus Brad Riddell. Drew Doba 1.69 times and $1.72. Brad Riddell 2.45 times and $2.10. This is a well matched up fight. They're really similar type fighters in the fact that they are predominantly strikers. Brad Riddell has the kickboxing foundations, and Drew Doba are more of a Muay Thai base. Very similar. Both guys very technical. Pretty good hand speed, good volume. Versatile as well. Like I said, both got kicks in the arsenal, and both have good movement, which also leads them to having pretty high rated defense as well. Even their power and their durability is at a pick'em. It's so close on the feet, so you have to look elsewhere to find an edge, and I think I found it. And it begins and ends with Riddell's defensive wrestling, which is not good. Drew Doba isn't the strongest wrestler himself, but I don't feel like you have to be a really good wrestler to take Brad Riddell down, because he lets takedowns, he gives takedowns up, and when he does, he gets control. He gives up a lot of control time. It's a bad look. He struggles to find the cage and find his way back up. And Drew Doba is going to be the larger man in the cage. He's going to be the physically stronger fighter, which plays to the fact that he could be able to exploit that defensive wrestling liability that Brad Riddell has, and that susceptibility to control time. As for Drew Doba's own shortcomings, it lies with the submission grappling. His submission defense isn't good. He's been submitted 4 times in his career. But it's going to be a much lesser threat against Brad, who has not notched a submission victory in his pro career. And if we're talking submission grappling, Drew Doba is the better jiu-jitsu practitioner. We haven't really seen it in the UFC yet. He has predominantly opted to strike and use that Muay Thai that we know and love him for. But he has 6 pro wins via submission, and plenty capable when it comes to BJJ. Anyway, this fight I could stick around it and go into it at length, but essentially, like I've said, the striking's very, very close. But I think Drew Doba has the edge with the grappling, and the fact that his size advantage is going to play into that. You know, he could also get dangerous with the submissions, but I'm going to be conservative and I'm going to take a Drew Doba decision at 2.8 times. I just like that he has the extra facet, or supposedly advantage on paper, at least. We'll have to see when they get in there. But even if this fight stays standing really close, Drew Doba could edge it anyway. Next fight along, we've got Paul Craig versus Jamal Hill. Paul Craig 2.09 times and $3.32. Jamal Hill 1.92 times and $1.30. So a light verdict favourite for Jamal, but a big betting favourite, which is something the Tadpole will let you know about in a minute. As for these fighters, both guys are big, light heavyweights. Jamal Hill has a massive reach, 79.5 to 80-inch arms, wingspan on him. And he is the better striker in this matchup. He loves to fight at range. His straight left is a cannon from the southpaw stance. He also kicks a lot and he mixes it up well. He will attack the legs, attack the body. He's strong in the clinch, you know, kind of finish Klitz and D.A. Briel. Butchered that. From the clinch. And his movement. He is a big guy, but he moves really well. He's very light on his feet. And, you know, his last win against Ovin St. Preux was the coming out party that he was looking for. You know, he poured the pressure on. He made good reads. OSB second guessing everything he threw, and led to the finish, which was very, very impressive. You know, Paul Craig, though, his form line also reads quite well. He's on a bit of a run. His last performance as well, also very good. It's probably not as impressive as Jamal Hill's because Shogun feels a little more washed, a little more done than OSP. OSP is still taking out these young contenders, but what he did to Shogun was phenomenal. You know, he ragdolled him from the clinch. He smothered him on top as well, and then he actually beat him in the striking department, which I thought Shogun was going to edge him there, and he did not. So, just to speak on that for a moment, you know, Paul Craig's striking, it is worse than Jamal Hill's, but he has come a long, long way. His defense is still his downfall, which is often the case in guys who strike second to grappling or strike to a secondary to another martial art form. But, you know, he kicks a lot. He has underrated power as well, and then he can fight with a bit of volume. His stats suggest otherwise from his earlier UFC fights and from the fact that he spends a lot of time on the mat. But for the time that he does spend standing, he's very active. That being said, Paul Craig will need this on the mat. I don't think he can hang with Jamal on the feet for too long. I think Jamal's too technical, too accurate, and I think he's going to exploit Paul Craig's defensive liabilities on the feet. But the thing is, if he can get it to the mat, it is his world, 100%. He is a very, very crafty submission grappler. He's got 12 pro submissions in his career through a variety of methods. He's very good with his weight control. He's very good with positioning. And he is slick to transition stances and slick with taking the back. And, you know, grappling, it is Jamal Hill's shortcoming. It got exposed against Darko Stosic, you know, his takedown defense. His stand-ups were okay, and he did work his way to the cage and back up. But, man, he got taken down at will 6 of 9, I think Darko Stosic went at in that fight. And it's the reason why I thought Ovince St. Preux was going to have much more success against him in their bout. I thought he would go for the takedowns and be too strong for Jamal. And, OSP did not even attempt a single takedown. Paul Craig won't make the same mistakes. He will look to floor this fight frequently. And, he's probably going to have to walk through the fight in order to do so, especially in those clinch scenarios where Jamal Hill is so dangerous. And him being able to survive that fight, it's not something I can really rely on him for, considering he has been slept 3 times. But I am going to rely on it because I am taking a Paul Craig round 1 submission at 4.3 times. It's a risky play, no doubt, like I've aforementioned, but it is my first of the unpopular opinions, my first of the underdogs. The value is too much. And yeah, you'll hear the recap at the bottom, but the value less so on verdict, but the value big time at the bookies, 3.3 or $3.32. That is up towards an 80% edge on Paul Craig, given the fact that Jamal Hill is such a light verdict favourite. So I'm going to back the public. And Paul Craig is the first of the formula bets on this card. Next fight along, we've got Damien Meyer versus Belal Muhammad. Damien Meyer, 2.59 times and $2.94. Belal Muhammad, 1.63 times and $1.39. I'm taking Damien Meyer. Another unpopular opinion. He is old. He is really old. I know that. But his game plan, his style, he doesn't need youth. It doesn't rely on things that age takes away. He doesn't need incredible volume. He doesn't even need reaction times. He doesn't even need durability. Okay, he needs some durability because he will need to survive the striking exchanges with Belal. But, Muhammad, he only has 4 knockout wins from 21 pro fights. He's not exactly the hardest hitter. So I can have faith in that somewhat. Damien Meyer, he's going to be outmatched on the feet. His boxing is poor. His defense is poor. And he's going to lose a stand-up fight. So there's a lot of risk in this. But he is a huge frame for welterweight. He is so strong, which is something that age doesn't rely on. We've seen guys, they can still be strong as they mature. And he does use that because he is a grappler. His takedowns are okay. When he shoots out in the open desperately, that's not okay. I don't like that. It's not the best look. But he is going to look to grab a hold of you at any possible opportunity. And when he does, you're probably going to end up on your back, which is going to be, I'm hoping, a regular occurrence. Belal, he doesn't really fight at range. He likes to pressure. He likes to get his opponents up against the cage. And, in that scenario, we've seen it a million times. Damien Meyer, he'll allow himself to get backed up just in order to draw you close enough and secure a clinch where he can utilize that strength, reverse position, kind of control against the cage, either drop down for the legs or work a body lock trip, As for Muhammad's wrestling, his takedown defense, it reads well. It does. It's 85%. But he has never really fought grapplers, and he's never really fought anybody with the size and strength as Damien Meyer. You're looking through the resume, it's Randy Brown, Tim Means, Curtis Millender, Lyman Good, Takashi Sato, Diego Lima. They are all at their foundation strikers, I honestly think Damien Meyer can get the takedowns, and I think he can control position as well. He is very heavy on top. He's so good with the way that he uses his weight. His whole life training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at the highest level. His body awareness is so good. Damien Meyer, a decision at 10.85 times. If this fight spends a lot of time on the mat like I'm hoping it will and like I'm predicting it will, Damien Meyer is every chance to snatch a submission. But it is super short on verdict considering he is the dog. And to be honest, the way I can see this playing out is I can see Damien Meyer winning rounds 1 and 2 off the back of takedowns and control and just maintaining position, fighting kind of sensibly and conservatively. And then, the third round will inevitably be dicey because Bilal Muhammad's conditioning is better. But, if he goes into the third knowing that he is clearly down 2 rounds, he's going to have to hunt the finish and get super aggressive, which will then lead into Damien Meyer, again, securing a clinch position or a position in close quarters and then flooring the fight again. Even if it is a desperation takedown, I have faith that Damien can secure that and win this fight. Damien Meyer has only lost to Woodley, Colby, Usman and Burns in the last 7 years. 3 of those names remain at the top of this division. Woodley, they fought in 2017 when he was the champion. So that loss, Woodley, people were talking about Woodley becoming the welterweight GOAT at that stage. So that is no knock. And yeah, another really unpopular opinion. And it's the formula, man. A 45% edge on Damien Meyer at $2.94. That is the second of the 4 formula bets on this card, which I will revise at the end of or recount at the end of the video, but just dropping them in here, dropping them in as we go, seeing how that works for the listeners. Let me know how you're feeling on that, or if you prefer the suspense. Next fight along, a 5-rounder. Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz. Leon Edwards 1.37 times and $1.16. Nate Diaz 3.71 times and $4.80. Leon Edwards' mindset right now, he is probably coming into this fight thinking it's going to be the easiest money that he ever makes. He should brutalize Nate Diaz. It's crazy, but he's even shortened at the bookies this week. Shortened from like $1.20, which is crazy. People are... the punters are betting Leon Edwards. And, I can kind of get it. Not really at the price, but I would expect Leon to come in, just, look sharper than Nate, probably kick the legs a lot because Diaz has been super susceptible to that in his career. And then either just work him on the feet or opt to throw in some takedowns and control time. Because Leon, he does have capable wrestling in the back pocket. Nate Diaz, everyone knows, he's got the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's got the Jiu-Jitsu edge in this fight. He has a tremendously dangerous guard. He can hit reversals, hit sweeps. He really relishes being on the bottom. And on the ground is where he is going to be the most dangerous in this fight in terms of finding a finish. He's gotten submissions in a variety of methods. Guillotines, arm bars, triangles, lots from the back, lots from bottom. But Leon can keep a top presence. He controlled RDA in their fight. With that all being said, that Leon should probably wipe the floor with Nate. I cannot agree that Diaz should be priced this unfavourably. He only really ever loses to grapplers. Connor and Masvidal aside, and I wouldn't say that Leon is an out-and-out grappler. I have said that he is a decent wrestler, but he's not a grappler by trade. And of course, neither was Masvidal. Masvidal's not a grappler, and he still managed to work Nate in the clinch and work Nate on the ground. It's a cause for concern, for sure. But the long track history does remain for Nate. His career extends beyond his last fight. He can work a really high-paced game against other strikers when he is allowed to strike. And he can be incredibly accurate when doing so. His defense, it's not all bad. He wears the damage. He bleeds. It's not a good look. But his movement actually checks out. He's very lucid. He's very long. He's a very tricky frame to fight. Offensively, his clinch work is solid. He likes the tie grip. He likes to throw knees up the middle, elbows over the top. And his mindset, he won't quit. He is one of the gamest fighters out there. And he won't just be coming to the octagon this weekend to cash a check. This is a big opportunity. He beats Leon Edwards and a whole lot of doors open up for him. A whole lot of big money fights open up for him, namely the Conor rematch, particularly if Conor loses to Poirier, because then what other fight do you make? But it is a tough call to make because Nate's difficult to read, especially because he fights so sporadically and his last performance against Jorge was less than average. And, Leon is the opposite in terms of I can trust, in a sense, what I'm going to see from him come fight night. But I don't make the easy calls, I make the money calls. And Nate Diaz is paying way too much. Way too much. So the verdict call is Nate Diaz via a decision at 9.23 times. As for the method, it's an odd call. He hasn't really won that many decisions in his career, whereas Leon Edwards has. But the fact of the matter is, I know Rocky is very durable. He's never been finished. And, Nate, he can be really aggressive, land a lot of shots if he's allowed to strike. And, if he can avoid getting controlled, if he can avoid getting taken down, or when he does get taken down, use his jiu-jitsu to create space and scramble. I think we see a much more even bout than the odds would suggest. And the 5-round nature of this fight helps him a lot. The fabled cardio of Nate, if he can avoid the control and if he can manage to keep his fucking scar tissue shut, he can definitely turn it up late. And Nate Diaz at the money line at $4.80 is the third formula play on this verdict card. It's a 57% edge as Leon Edwards slides into the moderate verdict favourite category at this stage. And the price is right. Great show. Co-main event, Davison Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno. Figgy, 1.51 times and $1.37. Moreno, 2.97 times and $3.02. Their first fight was an absolute slugfest, so entertaining. The best flyweight bout ever, and they both fought really strong fights. They came with game plans, they executed them well. Davison Figueiredo, he's always in your face, he's always throwing with heat. We know that. And then, Brandon Moreno, he showed off that chin and made a couple of really nice offensive reads as well. They both typically stand orthodox, but whenever they matched up in southpaw, Brandon would kind of shuffle step forwards and whip up that left high kick. And he did it a lot and actually rattled Figgy with it at one point and landed it a bunch of other times. Really similar to that Namajunas knockout on Weili Zhang in the manner that he was making that read and throwing that strike. So Moreno, he is a wily customer and he is very talented. As for this fight, this time round, I'm so intrigued, Their first fight, it showed me a couple of things. Brandon Moreno is actually the stronger grappler. His takedowns were better and his takedown defense was better as well, Whenever Figgy attempted to get his hands on him, he got his wrist right down, he fought for underhooks. One of the takedowns that Moreno did let up was actually just an off-balance kind of scramble that they ended up rolling through and transitioning in a fucking crazy period of events. As for submission grappling, I still think Davison is more dangerous. He's got a really, really frantic way of defending. There's always space, he rarely lets his opponents get in and get chest to chest. He always keeps them down low, like feet on their hips type scenario. And once he has a submission set up, he's very hard to get out. He has a tremendous squeeze. He's a very big flyweight. But Brandon showed us that he could tango on the mat with Figgy for sure. And Brandon also defends on the mat very similarly, very frantic. He rolls through positions and he's a highly credentialed BJJ black belt himself. Another thing, aside from the fact that I feel like Moreno is the stronger grappler, that the first fight told me was that Moreno actually has faster hands than Figgy. The jab was a big factor. It was in his face. It was in Davison's face a lot, and it really, really shook him up at times, Davison Figueiredo, one thing he always does, and that Moreno exploited was Figueiredo always loads up the hips, for a power shot, and he just got jabbed the fuck up. It's still going to be a factor here. Moreno's jab, Moreno's speed, because Figgy, as he always does, he's going to lean on his back leg and try to load up that big right hand. It's his style. It works, He's got ridiculous power, but it's a trait and an attribute that Moreno somewhat took advantage of in that first fight, and I think he can again here. In terms of making a prediction for this fight, though, I wanted to kind of read what could each fighter do differently. Because obviously this is a different fight. And I feel like the fighter more capable of making changes and adaptations is Brandon Moreno. Davison Figueiredo, he always fights very, very similar. He's the same fighter. He looks for the power shot. He's all pressure. He's very technical, but he does have some defensive liabilities, such as looking for that power shot. And what Moreno didn't do in the first fight, he didn't kick the legs. He threw one leg kick, for fuck's sake. He headhunted a lot. And, I feel like Moreno would have experienced a much higher rate of success if he just was a little more versatile. And I think there is a 100% chance that Brandon Moreno adopts a more versatile approach in this fight. He must go to the legs, and I think he will. Figueiredo has been compromised to the legs in previous fights. He is susceptible to it because he loads up so much. He gets a lot of weight through his front leg because he sits down when he enters range. And these boys stood toe-to-toe for essentially 25 minutes in their first fight. The leg kick was there all night. And upon reviewing the tape, it baffled me that Brandon Moreno didn't throw the low kick. And, it's a simple adaptation, but if he makes that one change in this fight, it'll be huge. It'll take lots of the heat off of that power that Figueiredo has. It'll compromise his forward movement and that pressure where, he gets you up against the cage, cuts the corner, and then he is just a lethal weapon, ripping to the body or ripping upstairs. You can't allow that to happen. And Moreno, the leg kick, man, it'll halve the danger that Figueiredo has. It'll make him more capable of avoiding that big shot. And it will accentuate the fact that Moreno's defensive footwork and movement is already better. It'll make that more obvious. So if you hadn't caught my drift, I'm actually taking Brandon Moreno via a decision at 5.14 times. It's kind of crazy. It's an unpopular call again. But on rewatching their fight, I actually scored it for Moreno. I gave him rounds 2, 3, and 4, with round 3 being a 10-8 due to the point deduction. And yeah, Figueiredo's power, it's always going to be a problem. His submission threat, it's always going to be a problem. Moreno's going to have to weather that danger again, show off that chin again. But if he makes the changes that I feel like he can and should, namely throwing that low kick, I think this fight looks a lot differently. And yeah, the fourth and final formula bet of this card is Brandon Moreno at $3.02, a 28% perceived edge. And I like the call at the co-main. Main event now, Izzy versus Marvin Vettori. Israel Adesanya 1.29 times and $1.34. Marvin Vettori 4.44 or 4.45 times and $3.18. Okay, we've been cruising for a long time. Let's try and hit this up. This is a good fight. Vettori has improved his boxing so much since their first fight. He gets lots of length on his shots, nice and straight, lots of power as well, and he's improved his counter game. He can lure that shot from his opponent and then come back with a 1-2, step through with a hook. He moves his head quite well on the retreat as well, which aids his countering ability, and he has always been very good defensively. He returns his hands to the chin. He's pretty reliable. But on the feet, it still is his world. He's so much faster than Marvin, so much longer. Marvin still, he doesn't use feints that much, which was a massive disadvantage in their first fight. He was really just biting on everything Izzy showed him. And Adesanya tagged him as a consequence at will with whatever strike he wants. And I don't see it being all that different this time round, Izzy's just a puzzle out there, which no one has really figured out. Yan didn't really figure him out on the feet. He just beat him with the strength. Because Izzy's way more versatile than Vettori. The fact that he can throw anything he wants to, it's kind of a basic thing. It's not necessarily a skill thing. But it's like a tool bag thing. And he can just hit Marvin with whatever he pleases. Another thing is, Izzy, he transitions stances so much. Marvin, what he's been getting into is he's been kicking a little more, and as soon as Izzy goes southpaw, it's just going to take away the left kick that Marvin has, because that body shot, the outside leg, it's just not going to be there, or the inside leg. For Izzy's own offense though, when he wants to open up that left side of Vettori, the open side, the vulnerable side, he can slide right back into orthodox and just hit Marvin with the right straight, or his right side kicks before Marvin can even really calculate what his next move will be, or even think about his own left side offense. In terms of what Vettori has to do, just like in the third round of their first fight, he has to get aggressive, he has to get inside, not let Adesanya be pretty on the outside. And Vettori, in that third round, he did realise success in doing that. He managed to enforce some grappling exchanges. He got takedowns. And that's the big thing for Vettori here, the ground game. And it's something we all know. Blachowicz, he managed to get Izzy down, he managed to control him, and that essentially won him that fight. And Vettori can do similar things. He is a good grappler. But I don't really think Marvin is that much stronger than Izzy, whereas Yan was. The first fight, Adesanya, he did manage to fish for underhooks. He peeled Vettori off him plenty of times in that fight, even reversed him against the cage and then found space. And even when Vettori did get those 2-3 takedowns, he couldn't control Izzy, he couldn't flatten him out, get his hips down. Adesanya kept busy, kept circling away, got space, and then eventually got his back to the cage and got up. And Adesanya has improved his ground game since then, and it's something he would be working on 100%. Same things apply here, Vettori, I don't think he can take Izzy down out in the open. His entries are too sloppy, Izzy's footwork is too good, and his sprawls are explosive. It'll have to be against the cage for Vettori, in my opinion, and in that environment, Izzy can kind of utilise his back against the cage to ensure he keeps balance, to post, and even if he does get taken down, then kind of be in a position where he can use the cage to stand right back up. I think Vettori will land some takedowns, but I don't think it's going to result in too much control time at all. And in attempting all that, in attempting to close the distance and charging in and kind of being predictable, he's clumsy, he gets clumsy, he's kind of a clumsy guy when he gets that forward motion up, 2 or 3 steps forwards on an entry, and Adesanya loves that. He doesn't mind being in the phone booth. We saw it against Whittaker, we saw it against Costa, toe to toe. He will look to move his head and counter back because his head movement is second to none. His reads are second to none, and he catches guys and hurts them in those scenarios. And that's just honestly how I see this playing out. I see Vettori being the aggressor, as he has to be, but I ultimately see it leading to him wearing a big shot. And I'm taking a second round knockout for Izzy at 2.01 times. As for change-ups in this fight, I think, like I said, Vettori will adopt his approach in the third round throughout. And what I think Izzy's going to change up is I think he's going to go to the body a bit more, open up some of those, open up a hole in Vettori's defense, which is typically quite good. Get his hands coming down, protecting the body. Smash the legs as he always does. Take away the power, take away the movement and those entries and those wrestling exchanges. Take away, Vettori's base in those wrestling exchanges, and then put his lights out. Both of these boys are fired up and they hate each other, but I feel like Izzy has that greater level of composure in the cage. Vettori does not. He fights with a lot of emotion, and that just isn't going to get you anywhere against Izzy. Except maybe the emergency department, where I predict he will be spending the night. This is the UFC, they'll probably pay for a bed for him. But, yeah. Anyway, big ep. Holy fuck. Talked for a long time consecutively there. We'll wrap it up with the bets. You've heard them all. As for the single plays, it's just the 4 singles, the 4 formula bets, and I'll go over the best prices I could find. I've got the Paul Craig money line at $3.50 on Bet365. I've got the Damien Meyer money line at $3, also on 365. Then I've got Nate Diaz, the money line. I've actually found $5.20 on Sportsbet. The price continues to rise. My word. And then we're taking Brandon Moreno at the money line, $3.02 on Sportsbet. So, you've heard all them. Nothing new to you. Probably new to YouTube though. I haven't heard any other capper taking that combination. But, like I said, unpopular, could be a hero. As for the multi this week, 3 legs. We've got the Jamal Hill Paul Craig fight to not enter round 3. We're taking Moreno moneyline and we're taking Izzy via a knockout at $18.16 on Sportsbet. The Moreno moneyline and the Izzy by knockout is self-explanatory. The Jamal Hill Paul Craig fight to not enter round 3. These guys from 28 Pro Fights only entered round 3 on 8 occasions. Paul Craig, he is a kill or be killed fighter. Like I've predicted, I've taken him to win this fight via round 1 submission. He is extremely live for a submission victory, but if he does not manage to secure takedowns or top position, he is every chance to get knocked out by Jamal Hill, who is a fantastic striker and has knockout power. So that's where we're at this week, guys. It was a big ep. I'm exhausted, but thanks for sticking around. Let me know if you liked the formula plays coming throughout the breakdown, or if you want me to hold them to the back end. Tell me if I'm crazy. I might have lost my marbles this week. Lots of underdogs, lots of big underdogs. Tell me who you've got, where I've gone wrong. We'll all find out come fight night. Looking forward to it. Cheers for listening and catch up.